Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and if you are still paying for cable television, your bill is likely going up again this month, thanks to your local broadcasters. Here in my home state of Connecticut, the local TV fee, according to the latest Comcast rate card, is going up to $48.30 a month, and that is on top of everything else you pay for cable. Even if you're in a locked-in cable contract, this is going to raise your bill because this sits outside of your normal cable services. These are the fees that go to your local broadcasters who keep jacking up the rates as they threaten to pull their stations off of cable lineups. We're going to take a look at how much this fee has escalated in my home area here, and I would love to hear from all of you as to how it's going in your neck of the woods, and we're going to dive into why these fees exist in the first place. Let's get to it. Now, if you are a Comcast customer, Comcast actually has a very detailed rate card that you can download from their customer support site. I've got a short URL here on screen, Lon.TV/Comcast rate card, that will take you right to it. I am unable to download this rate card for other parts of the country, so you have to log in first to get it. But if you are a Comcast customer, as I am just for internet now, this is really helpful for making sure that you're paying the right price for everything. And you also get details on the discount tiers for bundling. And if you don't mind, I set up a form where you can send in what the rates are in your neck of the woods, because I would like to see how this is shaking out. Because right now it looks like Connecticut actually has the highest broadcast TV fee in the country, at least of what I've looked at so far. So I'd love to confirm that. Now, these fees have been escalating quite a bit in my area. So last year, when I cut the cord finally, it was because they jacked the fee up by $5 from $32.75 to $37.50. But now it's going up over $10, another 28% over where it was at the beginning of 2025. This is just getting ridiculous here already. And to make it even worse, I found an old video when I first started talking about this rate card you could download. And this video was from 2018, and I was able to pull out the broadcast TV section in the screenshot here. And look at this, the broadcast TV fee was only $8 back then. So in less than 8 years, we've seen a 500% increase in this local broadcast TV charge. So where is all this money going? Well, it is likely going to a large corporate broadcast owner. So one example here is Nexstar, who owns stations all over the country, including one here in Connecticut. They are currently asking the FCC and the U.S. government for permission to extend their ownership even further by acquiring Tegna, which also has a number of stations throughout the U.S. Sinclair Broadcasting is another big one that likes to collect those big fees, along with Gray and Scripps. And what's been happening is that many people are cutting the cable cord, which means they're no longer paying these retransmission fees. But to keep this revenue flow going, these stations keep raising the prices to try to make up the difference. But this is not a very good economic model, especially given that their current economic model, where they get about half, if not more, of their revenue from these fees, doesn't rely on actually having any viewers, because cable subscribers pay these fees whether they watch or not. It is a broken system. Now, I did Google a bit and found some rate cards from other parts of the country, and it would be interesting to see what these cards are looking like now for the new year, because most of these are older. So for example, in Stockton, California, this was dated January 1st, 2025. The broadcast TV fee there was $33.70. I would imagine that fee is probably about as high as mine is now. Here's another one from Seattle, Washington from last year. And there they were paying about $30 a month for their broadcast TV fee. In Longmeadow, Massachusetts, again at the beginning of 2025, the fee was $34.30. So it'd be really helpful if you can go out and fill in the form. It'd be great to see what you're paying now and what your rate is going to be next year. And I would imagine all of these different cable companies offer one of these price charts so that you know what to expect on your bill. I think in many cases they're required to provide them by your state regulators. Now, you might be wondering, with broadcasters so heavily regulated by the federal government and cable companies largely regulated by state governments and the federal government, how can they get away with this? Well, the law allows it, because there was a time where cable companies had to carry every single local broadcaster that their customers could otherwise receive over an antenna. But the law changed, And that meant that broadcasters could have a choice where they could require the cable company to carry their station for free under must-carry rules, or they could grant consent and charge the cable company for carrying their signal. And you can imagine where most of these companies went, to the consent side. And when a lot of people had cable, this made a lot of sense because they could charge a little fee across all of their subscribers and bring in a very large, new, fresh revenue source. And for many of these big broadcasters, or most of them at this point, a good chunk of their revenue, sometimes as much as 2/3, comes from this revenue source and not from advertising. And that's because they've largely just gotten used to getting the money and not focusing on the quality of the content that they've been delivering. But of course, that is changing. People are cutting the cord, and now these fees are going up. Must carry was overturned in 2 court cases in 1985 and 1987, and consent came in 1992, and this is what started this mess. And the cable companies often are in a bad spot because both parties have to negotiate in good faith. Now, of course, good faith is in the eye of the beholder, but basically the statute here requires the cable company to negotiate with the broadcaster. They can't refuse negotiations. They can't walk away. They have to sit down at the table and exchange their best deals. And really, it's the broadcaster who's the only one that can pull the rug out here, because the local cable company could get fined if they're not negotiating in good faith or trying to leverage over the broadcaster. But broadcasters have some leverage that the cable companies don't. One is that the cable company is restricted by law to local channels only, so they can't import a station from another market. So for example, if my Nexstar-owned ABC affiliate gets too expensive, they can't go out to New York or Boston and pull in another station that is also an ABC affiliate. It has to be within the local market. So for the cable company, it's ABC on WTNH and nothing else, because they don't have the option to go out of the area to bring in ABC programming if the local one gets too expensive. Additionally, cable companies are required to put local channels on the most basic tiers. So here in Connecticut, we used to have a term called Lifeline Cable, which was just the basic cable package, which was your local broadcasters and a few cable channels here and there, but nothing spectacular. It was often very affordable. Now it is far from affordable, because on top of whatever Comcast charges you for service, you're paying this $48.30 a month for your local broadcast TV fee. And it's just unaffordable at this point. So the FCC is looking at something related to this right now, because every so often they have to do a review of broadcast ownership rules to determine that the ownership restrictions that are on these big broadcasters are adequate. And the FCC chairman has indicated some willingness to allow these big corporations to acquire more stations and get bigger. Now, the purpose of the restriction was to prevent any one voice, in this case a corporation's voice, from getting too much of a foothold across the country. And so part of this debate now over ownership rules also involves retransmission fees. And there are some conservative organizations that are calling for an overhaul of retransmission, like the International Center for Law and Economics here. What they're saying is that a more coherent approach would be to eliminate the retransmission consent framework entirely and treating broadcasters like any other content creator, and allowing copyright law and voluntary contracts to govern distributor relationships. So this proposal would level the playing field out a bit. It would give the cable companies some leverage they don't have now, so they could go out of market and maybe pit a Sinclair station against the Nexstar one to find the best deal for their customers. It may not be the best to lose your local ABC affiliate, but for many folks, they want to watch the football game, and they would still be able to get the football game at a lower price from a competing broadcaster. And that would be a good outcome, in my opinion, to give local customers a little more leverage against these big corporations. Another thing that would come from this is that right now, streaming providers like YouTube TV and Hulu are not subject to the same rules that the cable companies are. So right now, ABC negotiates a single fee for all of their affiliates in the country on YouTube. What the broadcasters want changed is to treat YouTube and Hulu like the cable companies, which would no doubt bring substantial increases in cost to every streaming subscriber. So I think the best solution here is something along the lines of what this center is proposing, to just get rid of these retransmission rules, bring some free market to the situation here, and see how that might play out, at least insofar as keeping these crazy increases from happening on such a regular basis. There's some other stuff going on here too, because this FCC docket is about broadcast ownership. And a small conservative news outlet called Newsmax, which you've probably heard of before, is on a number of cable systems, but they're concerned that if these broadcast owners are allowed to get bigger, or at least acquire more stations, it might push Newsmax off of cable outlets, because it might not be affordable for the cable outlet to continue carrying their network along with some of these networks that are owned by groups that also own broadcast television. This is kind of a complicated thing, but right now what Nexstar is doing is saying to a cable operator, hey, you need to carry our news station called News Nation in addition to carrying this local broadcaster, and you're going to pay for both. And if you're Newsmax, a smaller company with just the cable outlet, the cable company could decide, you know what, we can't afford to carry Newsmax anymore. We're going to push them off the lineup or put them on a more expensive tier so that we can afford to pay Nexstar, who we have to pay for the local station, who also is requiring us to carry News Nation on our basic tier. So you can see just how crazy all this stuff is getting here as everyone fights for what's left of the cable TV subscriber base. So lots to unpack with this one. I will keep you posted on what's going on with this, but definitely fill out that form, because I would love to see the price increases taking place across the country. This might be some good information for the FCC to have in their most recent docket that is looking at this broadcast ownership issue. That will do it for this one. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.